Ya llegó nuestro mejor Black Friday y tenemos miles de ofertas toda la semana, como hasta 75% de descuento en joyería fina después del 40% de descuento extra. Y da un paso adelante con botas para ella a solo $19.99. Además, encuentra toallas Home Expressions a solo $2.99 cada una. JCPenney, celebraciones que valen la pena. Ofertas válidas hasta el 26 de noviembre en la tienda en selección de estilos. Aplican exclusiones. Ofertas de Black Friday se excluyen de los cupones. Detalles en la tienda con un asociado.
Hey, welcome to episode 12 of the... No, wait, this isn't Morning Jessica.
I know. I can understand, Tim. I feel like I want to hear you say it too. I'm like, oh no. It's like old habits.
No, it's welcome. It's not hey, welcome to, right? It's no, this is Spotcast, right?
Oh, welcome to Spotcast. Welcome to
Okay, got it. Welcome to Spotcast. This is episode 12. My name is Tim Mitchell, and I'm in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
And I'm also joined by Jonathan Kuline over there in Mississauga.
Woo, Mississauga!
Or Mr. Mississauga, as I call them. Yeah, it's the bedroom community. All right. So let's dive into some quick little bit of fact check from episode number 11, I guess, right?
Yep. So we were on our best behavior last week. We only had a couple things, and they were just clarifications. So about 12 minutes in, we were talking about Get Smart, the actress who played Agent 99 on Get Smart, Barbara Feldon.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And 23 minutes, we were talking about the Arkham games. And so I wrote down a list of all the Arkham games, primary Arkham games. Batman Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Origins, and Arkham Knight are the four main games. There's also a PSVR game called Batman Arkham VR. And I think there's 5 different portable games as well for different platforms.
And didn't the Arkham Asylum stuff come out of the comic books or trade books or whatever?
It was actually not based on anything directly. There is a graphic novel, a terrific graphic novel from 1988-89 called Batman Arkham Asylum, Grant Morrison and Dave McKean, but this is something else. It's fantastic. I played all the games. They're super, super fun, really, really well done. Paul Dini actually wrote a bunch of that stuff. Is one of the creators behind Batman the Animated Series.
Right. And so the stories were written specifically for video game play kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's a great big, if you play them, it's like playing a 15-hour Batman movie.
Oh, cool.
Each. So, Very cool.
Alrighty. So, and Jaime, of course, you were the one that mentioned that last week, so you're a big fan of that series as well?
Yeah, and I didn't even realize there were 4. I thought there were 3. I completely forgot about Arkham Knight.
Yeah.
Arkham Knight was so much fun, getting to drive around in that badass Batmobile. That was super, super fun.
Yeah. So that's a big, heavy, armored one from the last bunch of movies?
Yeah, it's actually sort of a hybrid, and it again, they created their own sort of Bat universe with their versions of what happens to Batman, and carved out all these different niches. And one of the things they did was create a unique Batmobile. But it's super awesome. You can drive through brick walls with it, and it's super fun to tootle around Gotham in.
Okay, all right. So let's move on to the follow-up. So Jaime, you got something here?
Yes, this is not going to play well. It'll be in the show notes for those of you transporting it home. It's a comic that you'll have to read when you're not listening to this wonderful podcast. It's a little bit of follow-up to our discussion on Star Wars Battlefront 2. And funny enough, the topic that's portrayed here is actually a little bit behind the times now, because in the past few days, there's been even more drama around the way that Electronic Arts has dealt with the loot box and getting players to grind or more directly pay to get characters like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. And so this plays on that. It shows Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader scheming as if they were in place of EA. And since then, as a follow-up to our follow-up, Disney came down on this pretty hard. I think they realized the PR had gotten so bad, and with The Last Jedi coming up, they don't want any negativity around Star Wars. And they put the hammer on EA, and EA has temporarily pulled all of this loot box microtransaction sort of nonsense while they figure out how to make it not terrible, or at least not so obviously terrible. And they've gotten themselves in some trouble because the countries of Belgium and Australia are starting to investigate as to whether these things count as gambling and whether they should be regulated as such. So,
oh wow,
yeah, this is huge news, and I kind of wonder, reaching into it like a more than just code topic, if that will have repercussions for the mobile industry as well.
Right.
So keep your eyes out for this one. This is getting crazy.
So what's the deal with this? Is like in-app purchases or something like that, or how does it work?
Well, like abusively, to the point where your player progression heavily depends on these loot boxes, which are randomized. And we've gotten used to in-app purchases being bad. We're like, oh, look, you have to like grind for 24 hours in order to build one little tile in Dungeon Keeper. This is kind of like that same level. As Jonathan described, it was like 40 hours of grinding to get to the point where you could have just Luke Skywalker unlocked, obviously a premier player. Yeah. So they're pushing so hard on this, and there are people complaining about the addictive aspects to it. And the state of Hawaii, actually, now that I think about it, has started to investigate that here in the United States, where it's like, hey, this is essentially a casino aimed at kids with Star Wars on the cover. And so they're going to start looking. So this is getting to be some serious business. It's crazy. They've messed it up for the entire industry here. So keep your eyes out for this.
Interesting. So we have to stop the podcast now so you guys can go away and read Neil Stephenson's book called Reeve from a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, I guess. And it's about a bunch of guys who make an online gaming platform, sort of similar to like World of Warcraft, and how it gets corrupted by hackers. And there's a whole ransom deal in there, and it's a sign of the times. I think maybe some of the hackers have read the book. They're basically putting those principles into practice, right? So I have to clear my throat. Sorry. All right, let's move on to the next one.
The next one takes a little bit of unpacking. So I'd originally posted one link that we'll have in the show notes, but there are several steps to this. One is that DC Comics is going to have its own digital streaming service next year, according to the Hollywood Reporter. It's going to have the third season of the Young Justice animated series, and apparently will have its own live action adaptation of the Titans comics. And then on top of that, there's apparently going to be a Harley Quinn animated series on that same streaming service. Yeah, so it's kind of a lot to unpack there in that little bit of follow-up.
Wow.
And the Harley Quinn series sounds really interesting because they're going to base it off of the most recent DC Comics incarnation, which was really fun. And there's a rumor afloat on their internets that they want Margot Robbie to reprise her role as the voice.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So that could be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
I think she should do it. I think if, she's already carved out a nice niche for herself with that character. I think it'd be great if she could pick that up and run with it.
Right. Cool. So do you want to talk about Thor Ragnarok now, or do you want to throw that in with Justice League later?
I mean, I think just briefly, non-spoiler review, I think I would agree very much with Jonathan's review in that it's a very fun movie. And it starts out, with the first foot going forward is a bit of comedy. So definitely worth watching. There are 2 end credit sequences, so stick around after the show for that. And I think one thing that really comes to my mind, and we'll compare and contrast with Justice League, I think, is that Marvel really earned this, because everything that goes on in this film has built up in some sort of way, whether it's the relationships or the world building, all sorts of things have been built up over, several years and several Marvel movies worth of stuff. They reference certain things. They, have relationships that I think make sense within the context of the movie, but will have even more depth and flavor to them if you have been watching all the Marvel movies, from Iron Man, I think, is the one that kicked off the whole Marvel series now.
Yep.
And when you compare that with what DC is doing with Justice League and Wonder Woman, Batman versus Superman, I think they're trying to rush it a little too much, and they haven't quite earned that same thing that Marvel has gotten to. So that's kind of an interesting challenge. But we'll talk more about Justice League later. But as far as Thor Ragnarok goes, that also gets my thumbs up. So go see it.
That's 2 thumbs up, right?
Yep. 2 out of 3 podcasters agree.
Well, one of us is undecided because it's the whole he's a god thing that bothers me. But anyway,
but they do a good job of putting him low in this. They do a good job of casting him down literally into garbage to really sort of put him in a place of pitiable place, as opposed to where he's been high and mighty the last few films. It does go some interesting places.
Yeah, and without spoiling stuff, like there are major changes that change the Marvel universe and change Thor and his relationships permanently. Like there's no going back on stuff. So I really appreciate that. There's not like a magic reset button, which again we'll talk about in Justice League, I think, when we get the spoiler part.
Sure. Okay.
I would call it hella good. So go see it.
Hella good.
Cool.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Okay, so I'm just scrolling through this post you have here about the Game of Thrones. What's this guy about?
Oh, so this was fun too. This was yesterday. So HBO, if you'll recall, last season got hacked, and somebody was threatening to blackmail them over
that's right.
episodes of Game of Thrones. They were going to release them online if they didn't get paid. I think it was $6 million they were asking for in ransom in bitcoins. So the follow-up to that is yesterday, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that they've charged this person whose name is Bazad Mesri, who's an Iranian citizen, whose AKA is Scott Vashat. He's a hacker that used to work for the Iranian military. He's been indicted and charged with 1 count of wire fraud, 1 count of computer hacking, 3 counts of threatening to impair the confidentiality of information, 1 count of aggravated identity theft, and 1 count of interstate transmission of an extortionate communication, which is an awesome charge, by the way. So, he's looking at like 100 years for all these things if you add them up. But he is also not in custody. So good luck getting the Iranians to deport Bazad Mesri for his crimes. But they still went ahead and charged him. And so now he's a wanted man for trying to extort $6 million out of HBO. And he actually did release a bunch of that material that he pulled off. He got episodes of some of their shows, including Game of Thrones, and released them online. He also got confidential employee data, apparently.
Nice. Okay, like I said before, stop the podcast and go read Reeve quickly. This stuff will be it'll be comical. It's like somebody's invented the transporter, you know?
Yeah.
Anywho, all right. So I have a follow-up piece here. I was just watching Inner Space, and they just did a quick little special on Star Trek, I guess, because it's been a slow news day for them, which Jonathan and I will appreciate as something that we know about. Apparently, according to them, there are 727 episodes of Star Trek that you could currently go and enjoy. And I think part of this reason why they did this piece was they're involved with Crave TV, so they're reshowing all of those shows on Crave TV, right? So including the Discovery episodes as well. So they went through and they did a top 5 of a couple of top 5s, or actually 4 of them. So they did the top 5 classic shows. We can go through them if you like. Would you like to go through them?
Yes, sir.
All right. Number 5, and this is the TO. What do we call it?
TOS.
TOS, the original series. Number 5, Amok Time, where Kirk and McCoy, have to save Spock from himself because he's, in heat.
Yeah.
As we talked about before, Mirror Mirror. Number 4 is episode number 4 is Mirror Mirror, is the episode with the evil Spock. Of course, Trouble with Tribbles, everybody's favorite, it seems. In fact, I think they only said that the Tribbles were only on 3 or 4 episodes of, including the animated series, as a matter of fact, right? But they've only ever appeared but everybody knows what a Tribble is, kind of thing, which is interesting. Balance of Terror, which I think is that's the one I was talking about before that last week, in fact, which starred Mark Leonard as a Romulan captain who goes, plays a head-to-head game with Kirk, and of course City on the Edge of Forever, starring Joan Collins, which won a Hugo Award back in the day. Hugo Award, for those of you who don't know or transporting at home, is a award that's given out to the top. It's like the Academy Awards of science fiction. So that was that. They did a top 5 captains, which I kind of thought was pretty much a no-brainer. And because aren't there only like 6 or 7 captains in this whole series? I guess now we've added 2 more in Discovery, right? But aren't there aren't that many captains in Star Trek lore to pick from, right? Anyway,
yeah. If you're talking like headliners for series, you would only have the 5, and then we'd have to discuss whether Captain Lorca is considered like within like the 6th one or not, considering that Michael Burnham
there's also Sulu, right? And wasn't Riker a captain at one point?
Yep,
sure. So I think they meant probably the headliners, but without knowing how they compiled the list, it's a little hard to say. Like, I'm sure there was some random captain in some random episode who might be the ultimate captain, but judged by some rather arbitrary criteria. But
so should we tell our listeners what the list is?
Sure, yeah. So Archer number 5, Janeway number 4, Sisko number 3, even though he wasn't a captain per se.
He was. He got promoted.
Oh, did he? To captain, or he was commander?
No, he was commander when he started. He became a captain throughout the run of the series.
Oh, because he had that warship.
The Defiant, yeah.
Defiant. Oh, Defiant, yeah. Okay, and Kirk, of course, was number 2, which, I'm sure there's probably people out there, throwing their phones into the floor in disgust. But Picard, number 1. And I think Picard, overall, both of the 2 actors were, classically trained actors. And I think in their time, given what TV was in the 60s versus what TV was in the 80s, Picard was in the 80s, right?
Yeah, it started in the 80s.
Yeah. So quite good. And I remember when Picard first came on board as captain, I remember the sort of people were going, I don't know about that guy, but he had some really interesting portrayals, over the time.
Yeah, he got lucky in a way too, Patrick Stewart playing that part, because he got to do it for 7 seasons and 4 movies, as opposed to, when we have William Shatner, he only got to do it for 3 seasons and 6 movies or 7 movies, I suppose.
Right.
You almost got a little bit, and obviously there's superior writing and modern standards and everything else, but you almost got twice as much Picard to weigh that on too.
That's true. Yeah. And it's funny though, like with something like Kirk is kind of in the rock music analogy. He's like Robert Plant, for instance, right, who was in Led Zeppelin for a handful of years, right, as a very young man, and yet he's had to carry that for the last 30 or 40 years, right, since Led Zeppelin folded up, right? Yeah. But so Kirk is the same thing, or William Shatner, and he's tried to resurrect himself. TJ Hooker, and then he was the guy on legal show, Boston Legal.
Yeah.
He's
Tech Wars in there somewhere in between.
Well, he wrote Tech Wars. I don't know if you know that, but he had a whole series of books. I read those books before they made it into a show, right? So those are quite good books. And he's written I think he's written 1 or 2 Star Trek episodes as well.
Books,
novelizations. I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Anywho, so the top 5 TNG or the Next Generation, Darmok was number 5. Darmok, yeah. Yes, I've forgotten this expression. It's Darmok and Tajar.
No. Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Come on.
Yeah, okay.
Come on.
I just watched the show. I couldn't remember it. Yesterday's Enterprise, which was the one you guys were telling me about that I completely gapped on, which Tashiar comes back, right? Yep. The Measure of a Man, which is an interesting one where they put Data on trial because the Starfleet decides they want to dissect him, take apart and figure out how he works, right? And Picard defends him at the end of the show by saying, we're here to seek out new life, and there's new life sitting right in front of us. So I guess he wins the day there. The Inner Light won a Hero Award. The Inner Light, I'm drawing a blank on what that one was.
Oh, that's such a great episode. That's the one where he goes and lives the entire alternate life on the planet, and it all happens in his mind in the span of whatever it is, an hour.
Sure,
and he lives 40 years in his consciousness.
You're right. That's actually my favorite episode of Star Trek.
That's one of my favorites. It's such a beautiful episode. So poignant, so well acted by Patrick Stewart. Such a beautiful performance.
Yeah. And then Best of Both Worlds, which you guys have talked about a couple of times, which I think is a 2-parter with the cliffhanger in the middle where Picard gets taken over by and becomes Locutus, right? Of Borg. Interesting that he doesn't have a number. Or does he have a number? I don't know. Watch it.
No, he's designated as Locutus.
Okay, so the top 5 DS9s, so Deep Space Nines, are Call to Arms, which I can't remember now that I say it.
That was the one during the Dominion War where they mine the wormhole.
Oh, right. Yes. Trials and Tribulations is, again, another one of my favorite ones because that's the one where they cross over into the old series and they blend the 2 footages together, and they've got I've got her name, Dax has the hots for the good-looking commander there. Yeah, there's a Bach. Number 3 was The Visitor. Drawing a blank on. Oh, that's the one where Sisko's son. What's his name? Jake. Is that the one where? No, I'm thinking of Too Far Beyond the Stars. Right. Which one is the one where he goes off and lives his life in a time wormhole thing?
You're right. I think the Visitor is the one that has that where Sisko's lost in an accident on the Defiant. I want to say.
Yeah, he's frozen in time.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So is that just an alternate universe kind of thing, or does he?
No, that actually happens. He gets frozen in time, and then Jake gets to go back and visit him every 10 years, I think it is.
Oh, really?
And
wow.
He slowly tries to figure out how to get him as they reunite. He tries to figure out how to get him out of the loop, and Tony Todd comes back and plays him as an adult. And
Tony Todd is?
He was, he played Kern on Next Generation as well, the Klingon.
Cool. All right. And Too Far Beyond the Stars. Now I'm drawing a blank on that one.
I had to look that one up, but I did not like that episode. It just didn't fit with me. But apparently I'm wrong because it's number 2 on Deep Space Nine's best ones. That's the one where it's like a 1950s style.
Oh, yeah. The comic book writer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Science fiction writer. Yeah. That's true. And you get to see all the characters without their
without their makeup on and everything. Yeah.
Quark as a guy, as opposed to a Ferengi, right? So
yeah.
Very strange. Yeah. And number one is In the Pale Moonlight, and of course I'm drawing a blank on that one now too.
Jonathan, you want to take that one?
You know what? It occurs to me I don't know these by name.
Oh man. Okay, so I'll take this one then. I was being gracious, but
Oh no, you go ahead. I'm sure it'll jar my memory. I'm just thinking I don't remember the name.
So In the Pale Moonlight is arguably the episode that I will use every time somebody is like, oh no, Lorca's like too evil. I was like, whoa. Let me tell you about this thing.
Oh, that's the one where he tricks them into joining the... Oh, that's
where they trick the Romulans into joining the war against the Dominion.
Oh, that's such a good episode.
It is highly unethical what they do.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's when he narrates what he's doing through the whole show?
Exactly, yeah.
I don't think I've seen that episode. I have to go back and try and find it.
Oh,
on
yeah.
Crave TV or whatever, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you should definitely find that one and watch it because it...
Oh, it's on the Netflix, actually. Yeah.
It'll give you a fine appreciation for sort of how things have evolved into Discovery and how they sort of present the world.
So now it's interesting that we just talked about, Janeway and Archer and all these sort of crossover things, because now we can move right into the Orville because we had a crossover there as well. So, so this was it. We discussed previously. Oh yes, spoilers for those of you who haven't watched episode 10 of the Orville. We are going to talk about episode 10, the Firestorm. Now they're taking a break, I guess, till November 30th. Somebody says here, right?
Yeah, this week's Thanksgiving. So
yeah, so we've had the exposition episode on Mercer and his partner, ex-wife
Kelly Grayson.
Kelly Grayson, thank you. And we've had the other characters had the doctors had her exposition episode. So this was Alara's, which we assumed would be coming up soon. Bortus had one with his partner and his gender questioned baby, gender challenged baby. And so so this was Alara. So why don't you guys take it away since you guys put the notes in here?
I guess I can go. These were my notes.
Okay, then you're it. You're it.
Yeah, thanks. The episode starts with the Orville in a plasma storm. They're being rocked about. They're getting pretty shaken up. Get hit by a bolt of plasma that hits the engineering department and knocks loose some of the construction of the ship.
Bulkheads. They're called bulkheads.
Bulkheads lands on one of the engineers and pins him to the ground. And although the engineers try and help remove this thing, they can't lift it. So they call for Alara, who, of course, as a Selayan,
superhuman,
super strong. Well, she's not a human, but she's super strong. So she runs down to engineering, and when she gets there, she's blocked by a path. Her pathway is blocked by fire, and she freezes up. She can't bring herself to get through the fire. She's too afraid. And while she's standing there waiting, another plasma bolt hits the ship, and another piece of the bulkhead falls down and crushes and kills Engineer Payne. And so Alara is really freaked out about the fact that, something caused her to freeze up like that. She's never had that kind of reaction before. So she calls up her mom and dad to ask them if there was some reason why she should feel like this, something that she doesn't remember. And of course, her dad is Robert Picardo, who of course played the Doctor on Voyager. So we had our first...
Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
Yeah, we've got our first big Trek Orville universes collide here. So he plays Alara's dad, and he gets some pretty funny lines where, he's trying to convince her that she's, wasting her life on the Orville and that she can do better than that kind of job. And it starts belittling her for choosing to be a security chief. And she says, well, security chief is a very respectable position, in the human community. And he says, oh, of course, humans, the hillbillies of the galaxy. So the episode continues with her mom telling her that she actually was involved in a fire when she was a little girl. And so it was before she had sort of conscious memory, but clearly it made a mark on her psyche. And as the episode starts progressing, she starts having these weird visions where she's pretty sure she sees a crazy clown in the corridor. And so she thinks she's losing her mind. She thinks she's hallucinating, but then she checks in with the rest of the crew, and sure enough, they have video footage of this green-haired, psychotic-looking clown actually running through the hallways, but then disappearing. So they can't put that together. They don't know what's happening, which leads to a very funny conversation on the bridge about why are clowns scary? What makes clowns scary? I think Isaac asks, why would clowns be scary? So some funny stuff there, including the line, which I liked, which was, a hobo. Was it a hobo clown? Why was it hobo? Hobo clowns are the most dangerous because they're hungry. So right. As the episode continues, there gets, more and more sort of creepy things are happening on the ship. Alara confronts the creepy clown again in a darkened shuttle bay. They have a fight. She vaporizes him. So, something weird is happening here. They're trying to figure out if it was related to the plasma storm, if there's an alien presence on the ship, what's going on. And as the episode progresses, Alara's walking down the corridor with Gordon when a giant spider appears and eats Gordon, which was pretty darn funny in spite of the fact that Gordon dies. And as the episode progresses, more and more creepy things happening. At one point, this bunch of little tarantulas show up in the briefing room, and then they disappear. So they're trying to figure it out. Eventually, Alara realizes that she can't find the rest of the crew. She's trapped on the ship and she's alone. And so then she's having this weird, experience. How is she going to get out of this? They're heading back towards the plasma storm to see if they can figure out what's going on there. And in the end, it turns out that the whole thing was a simulation.
It's a dream. Yep.
It's all a simulation, which of course it was. It turns out that she had used Directive 38 to do a security override. She'd undergone short-term memory wipe, and she had these fears put into herself to test herself to see if there was anything else she was afraid of, because she was afraid she was going to be afraid or something like that.
Right. So they couldn't bring her out of it. And that's what the Directive 38 was, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, she basically put a security override on so that not even the captain could wake her up until she solved the problem or whatever.
Right.
And then it just sort of ends. The episode just sort of ended. So it was a weird, it was kind of clear, again, it was a bit of a trope. They were kind of going, I don't think any of us thought that Gordon got eaten by a giant space spider and there was a creepy clown for some reason on the ship. But, and then, the episode just sort of ended, I thought, a little abruptly after that, where they were like, oh, Alara, don't do that again. You're going to get, okay, and good night. That was sort of.
Yeah. In my notes, I have a little too Kirk-like in rhetoric.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very strange. It's funny, whenever Mercer turns on that sort of, important dad type talk or captain type talk, I just can't take it from Seth MacFarlane. I'm sorry. It's Peter Griffin. In fact, I forget that Peter Griffin is Seth MacFarlane sometimes, right?
Yeah. You can hear Brian the dog if you just, because that's pretty much his speaking voice is Brian the dog.
Oh, that's true. Or even Stewie. Yeah,
exactly. And he's starting to get a little preachy. You can hear an awful lot of Brian the dog giving speeches, it just, yeah. But, I don't know. We were talking again. We talked about this the last few weeks, that they were sort of slowly doing the exposition, get to know something about the character episodes. What did you guys think about this as that episode for Alara? Do you feel like you know that character better now?
No. Well, no. Except to say that she has some flaws. But then again, I don't see her as I don't see her as like a Worf or Tasha Yar in terms of like managing security for this entire, ship, right? But then that may just be my prejudice because she's a young lady, young girl, right? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of I don't know. I think you were saying before, I think a couple of weeks ago, you said that there's like 7 episodes that are good, 7 episodes that are okay, and then 7 that are throwaways, right?
Yep.
And I think this is a throwaway, right? I don't think it matters that we really get to know Alara all that much. In fact, we probably could get to know her over the time, unless they're thinking that this isn't going to run for 7-8 years like most shows that are successful do, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the argument is, though, we're talking about traditional television where you get 21, 22, 24 episodes. The other thing that I linked to for our audience here is an article that they've announced they've cut this down. So they're only going to do 12 episodes.
Oh, really?
The entire season. This was episode 10. So there's 2 more episodes. This week they're taking the week off because of U.S. Thanksgiving. And then there's 2 more episodes, and that's it for the entire season. They're coming back again until next fall. So they haven't cut the episode. They're going to include it in the next season. But
so by comparison, how many Family Guys do they do in a season?
That's a good question. I would say it's closer to the 20s.
Right. Because that must take a long time to sort of do the drawing and stuff like that, rather than just shooting it. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know what the production time on that is. I mean, the voice recording probably is a shorter process, but then obviously the filming, acting, everything else. But then the animation would take a long time. So
that's true. And then there's also American Dad, right? That's another show. Is that still on, or?
That's another good question. I don't know. I must admit, I think after the first couple episodes, I tuned out of that and never went back.
Yeah.
20 episodes apparently. That's what they do per season. Is
right.
The last
How many
years
seasons have been on?
They just started season 16.
Wow, 16 seasons.
To be fair, they took a few years off there because remember it ran for 3 years and then it got canceled and then it came out on DVD and everybody loved it, so they brought it back 4 years later.
Oh, Oh,
and it's been running again nonstop since 2005.
Right. Interesting. That's another one of those ones I'm waiting for when I'm sick in the hospital and have nothing else to do but watch endless TV shows.
The Family Guy.
Yeah,
Family Guy is an excellent guilty pleasure. It's a perfect Netflix show. They're 20 minutes a piece, 22 minutes a piece. You could just sit down and digest an hour's worth, laugh, sporadically or heartily depending on the episode. It's the perfect binge show.
Yeah, I love the characters. You're right. So that's on Netflix?
It's on Netflix. Yep. And that's,
okay, cool.
It's one of those shows for me that has completely fallen off my weekly radar. I don't watch it on a weekly basis, but every time they drop a season on Netflix, I will sit and watch the whole thing over the course of 2 or 3 days and laugh my butt off and then not think about it again for another 362 days.
Right. But there's also the Blue Harvest as well, right?
Oh, that whole series was fantastic. The Star Wars, yes, their homage to Star Wars. I wish I could show that to my sons, but then they don't know what Family Guy is, so that half the jokes wouldn't work.
Right. I also love it to play between Family Guy and Robot Chicken with this. Star because what's the name of the kid that plays
Seth Green?
Seth Green is the voice of the son, right?
Yeah.
Who has a name and I can't remember what it is right now. Chris.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Jaime? What did you think of getting the Get to Know Alara episode?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as good as a character episode as some of the other ones we mentioned. It's an okay episode. I think it plays better as a Halloween episode. So if they had shuffled the deck and instead of having majority rule take place, I think they could have had this one instead. It probably would have played better like a Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors kind of episode.
I was just going to say, yeah.
The clown was legitimately creepy. So, I mean, it was a good job on that one. But the episode was kind of so-so. I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
Has there been a Treehouse of Horrors for every Halloween season?
They didn't do one in season 1.
Oh, okay. What happened there? I wonder.
Well, I guess they had the idea going into season 2, and it's just carried on ever since. I actually watched this year's Treehouse of Horrors when it was on for the first time in a few years, and it was funny as heck. I thought it was really funny. I don't watch Simpsons again. I don't watch it very much anymore, but I really watched. I enjoyed this year's episode.
Interesting. All right, so that's it.
I think that's it for. Oh yeah, so we talked about the fact that 2 episodes left. So we don't have a lot more to go this year, and then we're into.
But were we really expecting a lot from the Orville in retrospect? Like, were we really expecting to be all that whiz bang? And I think we thought it was going to be more funnier than it is, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, just based on the style of stuff that he does, right?
Yeah. I think when you hear Seth MacFarlane, you just assume it's going to be a humorous piece.
Well, you expect it to be campy. You expect Spaceballs, the series kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the offhand jokes and like the glory hole and stuff like that.
The glory hole, yeah.
References and stuff like that all the way through, but you don't get that. Oh, interesting. I look at the special effects and the money they must be throwing at that, amazing.
Yeah, although again, this week, other than a makeup budget, they didn't really blow a lot of money. Again, we talked about how much those first few episodes felt like, wow, look at the production value on this. This is better Trek than Trek. And then it was, let's shoot one we went back to 21st century America. Oh, let's do one in the scrub brush outside of Los Angeles. And this one was just, we've already built these sets.
Let's build a corridor. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's run her down the corridor. Let's run her back down the same corridor, but the opposite way. So yeah.
Change the camera angle. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I wonder what they're going to do to wrap this up. I wonder if it's going to end on, a Trek style cliffhanger, or if it's going to end on, they're just going to do a couple of more episodes and they're out. If we're going to get more world building from them, or where they're going to go from
maybe they'll do a Firefly thing and just not show the last 2 episodes.
Followed by a film 5 years later.
Yeah. And a DVD box set, right?
No, they've already announced season 2. Jaime told us last week that we're getting season 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe they'll do that for that one. They'll do different. Yeah. Alrighty. So, hey, let's talk about Justice League. We all went to see Justice League last week, surprisingly. Yep.
Yeah, I was hoping we could split this into 2. So one would be kind of like the non-spoiler thoughts, and then the big spoiler warning, and then lots of spoilers.
Sure. Okay. Well, I mean, let's talk about this, because I don't think we've ever really delved into where my appreciation of comics comes from. But because I used to buy comic books every weekend, my parents would give me allowance, and I would buy Casper and Superman and Spider-Man. I'd buy one, right? So when the Justice League came on TV, like the original, like in the late 70s or whenever it came on TV, I used to watch it all the time, right? So and I'm a huge Batman fan, and so I also went back and when the Christopher Reeves Supermans came on TV, I watched all of those as well, the black and white ones and the color ones.
George Reeves.
Sorry, yes. Christopher Reeves, the other guy. And of course, I was around for the Superman movie, right? And I'm going to talk a bit about this, of course, in my pick. But so Justice League has always sort of had a soft spot in my heart, or in terms of where I sort of go to when I think about comics. You know, Spider-Man, Superman, and Batman. And it's all based on what I saw on TV primarily, right? But you guys come at it from a different point of view, because you guys went through the X-Men and the whole Marvel universe too. And I really did. I know Spider-Man's a Marvel character, but I didn't get that whole sort of thing. So what do you guys think about Justice League? Where does it fit into your sort of love-hate kind of relationships sort of thing? The Justice League concept itself.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it was always one of those. It was one of those staples. I must admit, I think we talked about it last week or maybe the week before. We talked about how I started out as more of a Marvel fan. I read X-Men, I read Spider-Man, and then sort of migrated towards DC later. And my first taste of Justice League was very unconventional as far as those things go. A lot of people, when they think about Justice League, think about the big lineup of superheroes, the Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, and Martian Manhunter is actually the other character that's not Cyborg. Again, it was like, hey,
who the hell is Cyborg? I'm sorry,
we've got a token woman in there. We don't have places for minorities. That's where this was 1960s. We're not there yet. But I got introduced to Justice League by reading the reboot of the DC universe that they did. They did a big, huge crossover series in the mid 1980s called Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was this sort of landmark 12-issue limited series where they took all of the continuity from the 1940s until then that had, all these different versions of Superman, different versions of Batman, the multiverse, and they compressed it all into one world. So they brought all these random divergent storylines into one thing. And as part of that, they relaunched Superman, they relaunched Wonder Woman, the Flash, and they relaunched the Justice League. And the Justice League actually was, it was a vaguely comedic series. It was kind of like the Orville. It was Batman, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter. It didn't have Flash or Wonder Woman because they were off on their own books and everything. But they brought this book forward that was actually really tongue-in-cheek and funny. It was almost like, what if these guys were, a club of heroes where they got together and kind of ragged on each other a little bit and made fun of each other a little bit. And it was one of my favorites, still is one of my all-time favorite books. It was called Justice League, and then it was called Justice League International. And it was fantastic. And then it wasn't until later when, after yet another reboot and this happens about every 8 to 10 years in comic books, they rebooted Justice League again, and called it JLA, Justice League of America, JLA. JLA got booted as this, they brought back the core group. It was, Batman and Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, the core team. And it was written by Grant Morrison, who's one of the most iconic writers of the last 25 years of comic books. And he wrote it for about 5 years. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, and still one of my favorite runs by any creator on a book. And for me, that really cemented this is important. Like this is like a touchstone book. And DC's made a good effort over the last 20 years to make sure that book gets relevant creators. They had Jim Lee working on it. They had Jeff Johns working on it. They've had their A-list talent making sure that this is an important book that merits your attention. So it started out as something that was not necessarily right in my radar, but over the course of time really cemented into something that is an important pillar of my comic book enjoyment. So when they started talking abstractly about, hey, let's do a Justice League movie, and it had been rumored for years and years and years they were going to do this, and then it seemed obviously inevitable when they started to reboot this universe with Man of Steel, what was 5 years ago. I was excited. I was excited to see those in the same way I was excited to see the Avengers come to life on my screen, the same way I'm excited to see Ant-Man on my screen, and, forgive me for saying so, but at the same way I was excited to see Howard the Duck come to life on my screen.
Right, yeah. I
was excited that they would finally get to see these characters interacting on a big screen, and, they do know how to push those buttons. They do know how to put you in those places where you're like, man, I can't believe I'm watching Batman talk to Aquaman. I can't believe I'm watching the Flash and Wonder Woman share a moment. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting concept when you think about when you play, like, an analogy would be like the NHL, games where, like the game system games, where you could put Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky and Bobby Orr and, Ken Dryden or whatever or Patrick Waugh on the same team against whoever, right? Kind of thing. So it's like a dream team, if you will, of like the American Olympic basketball team kind of thing. You get the best players from the country and put them all in one battle against whoever and just go out there and kick ass, right?
And before because I want to hear Jaime's take on this, but before we do that, I will just drop in one line by saying that's an excellent analogy, Tim. But what you're talking about now is you've just assembled the U.S. 1992 men's basketball team or the 72 Canadian team. Who did they play against in this movie?
The Russians.
No, they did freaking not play the Russians in this movie.
Wait a minute.
They played Team Japan. This was not A-list villainy. This was not like, let's pull out our A game. We're going to have the Justice League out. We're going to have the biggest, baddest, most impressive villain.
Oh, you mean because they battled off against Ultraman for argument's sake?
Yeah, they did not pull out Team Russia. Okay, this was not Russia. So I did not see Krejciak in goal on this one. No way.
That's true. Yes, true. That's true. Yeah, and I have a phrase we're going to drop, but let's hear what Jaime's idea of the Justice League in general, not necessarily this movie, Jaime.
Yeah, so I think similar to Jonathan, I remember reading the Justice League America comics and Justice League Europe, which had Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, and I think Fire and Ice might have been on that one, but they could have been on America. I can't remember which side when they had their team set up.
Yep.
And I also enjoyed you talked about the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited animated series. I would also say, given what I talked about in Thor Ragnarok, they also earned those series because they had two predecessor series, the wonderful Batman animated series that was very adult, even though it was ostensibly for kids, and the less successful but still pretty good Superman series.
Yeah.
And they brought both of those characters sort of as is from their continuities as well as their voice actors. And so they built up a lot going into those series, and it was just a great ensemble.
Yep.
And it is kind of interesting to contrast them with the Avengers, because you would think, man, this is like easy mode. The Avengers, the most recognizable one for like random person in the world would probably be the Hulk. Because, Big Green Monster and Lou Ferrigno's series from like the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you got like everybody in the world knows Superman. Everybody in the world knows Batman. Just about everybody in the world knows Wonder Woman. So you would think this would be the easiest thing. And I think Marvel has done a better job of working with that. And with the Justice League, for me, I lean towards DC Comics, having grown up with them more so than Marvel, even though I enjoyed both. And so for me, it's been interesting to see how this has played out with Batman versus Superman, Wonder Woman, I guess Suicide Squad's in between there, and then this movie. So it's a little sad in some respects, but my non-spoiler review, I think, of stuff will maybe change things a little bit.
All right. So with that out of the way, the Wicked Witch of the West called. She wants her flying monkeys back.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. To be fair, they've gone on steroids or something. Like
That's true. That's true.
They were
zombie flying monkeys. Yeah. Okay. Admittedly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the undead version of the flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz. Yeah. So do we want to do a non-spoiler one before we do a spoiler one, or?
Yeah. Let's try and do a non-spoiler one.
All right. All right, Jaime, you dive in with non-spoiler first. Let's hear your thoughts. Non-spoiler version.
Yeah. The non-spoiler review I tweeted about a few days ago when I went to go see the movie. I think it's a fun movie, and I think it's worth seeing. Now, as pointed out by a friend of mine who pinged me from India, he's like, dude, you're like the first person I've heard say good things about Justice League. I said, well,
really? Yeah.
It's not a great movie, and I'm not even sure that it's a good movie, but it's a fun movie. It's a good popcorn movie. You can go and enjoy yourself. And if you watch it on the big screen, I think you'll enjoy it more than you will watching it through like a Redbox DVD or Netflix or something.
Yeah, I think it was a collection of moments. Some of those moments were, hit me right in the sweet spot of, those iconic. I mean, say what you will about Zack Snyder, but the man can frame a shot. There's some really cool moments that are put together in there. But it definitely left me wanting, especially as we discussed a moment ago in the villain department. I think that was, it's amazing to see those characters brought to life in that way. It's amazing to see them interact with each other. And I thought all of the actors did a good job of capturing elements that I like about those characters. But I'm not sure as a whole you could say that it's a good picture.
I don't know. I thought it blowed up real good. I'll tell you, the thing the Avengers bothers me a lot is that they're constantly throwing each other around into buildings and crashing. There's a lot of collateral damage in the Avengers, whereas there was some collateral damage in these movies, like cars being tossed
Man of
around.
Steel, man of Steel.
Well,
yeah, I'm going to agree with Jonathan on that one.
I was talking about this movie, Man of Steel. I as you remember, I fell asleep during the Man of Steel, which meant there was probably too much action going on in that one. But there's another story behind that. But yeah, I don't know. It's again, like exactly right. Like the thing about it is when there's just too much like throwing around and too much just gratuitous, tossing around of things. It just doesn't sit right with me, right? And I don't know. I'm not really buying the Superman and Batman don't get along thing, and I didn't buy it too much in the previous movie either. Probably because in it's like trying to tell me that any Star Wars movie is bad because there's an adolescent in me that remembers the relationship that those guys had back in the day, and I can't erase that from my mind. I still, when I think of Batman, I still think of Adam West and pow and zap and zing, and he never took himself very seriously, right? Whereas Superman was always super serious, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's I didn't mind it. It was a good you guys were talking about going to see Pacific Rim and Pacific Rim 2, the rise of whatever. I don't care. I'm not going to go. Like to me that was a stupid movie. Like I don't even buy into the idea. So but so for me, the Superman, Batman, and sort of the Justice League thing, I was just happy to see the 5 people, like you said, on screen. Except for I just don't get Cyborg, right? Other than like you said, he's the token visible minority guy, right?
Well, to be fair, Momoa is also a person of color, but
which one's that?
Aquaman.
Oh, yeah, Aquaman. Okay, well, Aquaman had blonde hair and green pants when I knew Aquaman, right?
Yeah,
and he talked to the whales. He'd go, oh, and the whales would come, right?
Boom, 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 boom. That's how I remember that sound with the concentric circles leaving his head.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
and they touched on that in the movie too. When we get into the spoiler side, but they do touch on that he actually has some abilities beyond the jokey ones.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was like for me, that casting was almost they might as well have cast The Rock for all I know that character. I know him from Game of Thrones, obviously, but in Game of Thrones he was quite a different person because he barely spoke the language, as it were, right? He had his own language, right?
Yeah.
But and his role in Game of Thrones was completely different. But I haven't really seen him in any other things, So
yeah.
Where's he from?
His father is Hawaiian and his mother is Caucasian, and I believe he was raised in Iowa, I want to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know his background. I assumed he was Maori, given the way he looks and sounds, but it sounds like I wasn't too far considering I had a Pacific Island.
Oh, I got it right. I looked it up. There you go. His father is a native Hawaiian. His mother is German, Irish, and Native American, and he was raised in Hawaii and then went to Colorado State.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do the spoiler version, unless you guys have something more non-spoilerish to say.
Yeah, I think big spoiler warning for anybody who has not seen Justice League. You might want to pause the episode and then come back after you've hit the movie theater.
You're going to miss our picks, though.
Yeah, you want to come back for the picks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we'll give you, 10 minutes. Go ahead. I mean, you guys talk for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, so I would agree that the villain was not like something I would have had as my first choice. And I mean, to be fair, they did show this at the very tail end of Batman versus Superman, right? Where Lex Luthor is like, he's coming
But that wasn't Steppenwolf. That was Darkseid.
Yeah, that's who I thought he was referring to. But it looks like it does tie into Batman versus Superman. So I give them some extra bonus points for doing that. But Steppenwolf, the conqueror, of the new gods, and he's been born to be wild kind of guy. I don't know. He just didn't. He wasn't anything other than random powerful villain that we have to beat up. And I guess he does an okay job at that role. This might be completely blasphemous. I actually think he's probably a better villain than Ares was in Wonder Woman.
Yeah, no, that's pretty blasphemous.
I think Wonder Woman's probably a better movie, but I don't think that the villain was quite as good.
Yeah, I mean, the villain, at least, the thing about the Wonder Woman movie was that he was the Cypher, right? Again, spoiler alert for the people who haven't watched Wonder Woman. Now we're getting into that too.
That's me. Yeah, hello.
But without spoiling too much of it, the basic premise is that they know that Ares is out there, and they spend most of the film trying to uncover where and who Ares is.
Right. Okay.
So that at least had its own sort of air of mystery or air of where's the big bad? When are we going to see the big bad? It had that anticipation, whereas this was just kind of rammed down your throat. It was like, I'm big and scary and I've come back to mess up the earth. And it was a 66 Batman villain. Like, it was really in your face.
And what's with these magic stones that keep appearing in all these different things? Like Guardians of the Galaxy has one. Of course, Thor has them because he's from Asgard or whatever.
Yeah.
But these stones and artifacts that keep showing up, I guess they're out of the comic book stories, and you put them all together and they make this mighty, in this case, nuclear something or other that's going to.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of
destroy everything, right?
They kind of stretched that out of a premise in the comic books a little bit, but I mean, the thing is, in the Marvel universe, they've used these things as MacGuffins towards building towards.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of Marvel. It was kind of a Marvel. That's what I was sort of saying. It was kind of a ripoff from.
Yeah, so it was the same thing, but Marvel, like Jaime was saying earlier, Marvel earned it, right? They built this up over the course of a dozen pictures. That there's this sort of building universe, and then there's this building threat behind this universe.
Right. Yeah.
Like, this was just like down your throat in a nanosecond. It was like, by the way, there's a thing. Here's the thing. We're going to show you the thing. Let's go. And there's another thing, and here it is. And we're going to get that other thing, and we're going to bring them all together and make a thing. It's all going to happen in this one movie.
Yeah, you're right, Tim. So from the Marvel side, you have the Infinity Stones.
That's what I'm getting mixed up with. I see. I'm getting mixed up. Like, that's how.
And those, I understand why, because those actually legitimately belong in the comics more or less the way they are in the Marvel movies, right? You have 6 of them. They each have their own abilities, and Thanos is trying to collect them, and that goes into the Infinity Gauntlet graphic novel series, and that's going to be playing through everything now, and will lead up into Avengers: Infinity War. In contrast, this might need some fact checking, and maybe Jonathan can help here. The mother boxes, as portrayed in DC, were never really Infinity Stone-like, from what I recall. They were more like magic computers that would help you teleport from one place to another.
Sentient. They actually established. There was a great series back when you and I were younger men, Jaime, that the Mr. Miracle, who was a member of the Justice League International, Mr. Miracle had a mother box with him, and the mother box was this sort of sentient little box computer that he kept with him, who could help him through his adventures. Perhaps that's something they've done in more recent years. This story of the mother boxes being all joined together that I have not been paying attention to. I must admit I haven't read every single DC book the last few years, but I have no recollection of them ever being this kind of thing. I think this was just, hey, let's find a thing that they can fight over that would bring these people together to try and stop the bad guy from doing the thing.
Right. They become effectively like the Infinity Stones, and also the Matrix of Leadership from the Transformers movie.
Yeah.
That came to my mind based on the way it was graphically designed, and I mean, we're already in spoilers. The way it brings back Superman, or how it takes part in that, is very similar to Optimus Prime. Right. Spoilers for the Transformers movies.
Yeah. So can we talk about the rebirth of Superman? Because
let's back up here, because so here's how much I got out of this Batman Superman movie. I didn't even remember that he died in that movie, right? And it's like somebody had to tell me, because I asked a friend at work, okay, I asked you, Jonathan, the other day. I said, how did he actually die? Because I don't remember that, right? But now I do, because you explained it to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and I do remember when you were reading the comic books at the time, because, I would see them going past the kitchen every now and then, and I would see Superman is dead kind of thing, and everybody's like, oh my God. And then there's like 5 Supermans that come back, right? The robot Superman and the bad Superman and the good Superman and what have you. So I understood that there was some sort of rebirth of Superman. I mean, like, they couldn't let that go as a property, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. I just, it was a little bit like, again, it's like this whole, Thor's a god thing that I have trouble with, because, I just don't buy that stuff. But the idea that somebody could be dead, admittedly he's from another world and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like the whole grave digging scene, and, they didn't do the thing where the corpse falls out of the Pratt falls out of the coffin thing, which they could have done. If Mel Brooks was producing this movie, they would have done that for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Or they would have got the wrong head on him or something, right? Or his arm on backwards or something. Yeah. But again, it's like, I was thinking about this actually as I'm watching the movie. I'm like, do they really expect me to suspend disbelief? And then I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm watching Superman and Batman and like Wonder Woman, lasso of truth and all that kind of stuff. So I guess, whatever they want to do, let's just throw it at me, right?
Yeah. I thought the parts that really, there's only a few parts that sort of took me out of the movie experience. Every time they showed the bad guy, because that was PlayStation 2 level animation.
Yeah.
On his depiction.
Well, flying monkeys too, right? Of course,
You know what? I found them less because they were moving. At least they kept focusing on Steppenwolf as the bad guy, and they would show his face, and I was like, it was just like those scenes in Rogue One. Every time they showed Tarkin's face, it hits that uncanny valley of it's just not right. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's not a human face, and they did the whole thing in motion capture, and I love Kieran Hines, who plays Steppenwolf. He was Mance Rayder on Game of Thrones. Fantastic actor, and I love his voice, like very menacing and everything. But it's just not right. There's no way they weren't battling a cartoon character. And I get that in those scenes, essentially we were just watching a cartoon because I don't think they were in every one of those scenes the Flash was running super fast and that Jason Momoa was riding a parademon into the floor of a building. And I get that it's a lot of CGI going on, but I think that was my problem with it. It felt like it devolved into this chaotic cartoon. And I think Jaime nailed it. Like, I'd rather watch the Justice League cartoon. It was amazeballs. I don't need this. There are better versions of the Justice League as a cartoon. Like, show me people, show me practical, show me dynamic, show me a villain that I can not be weirded out by, and I'm in. But the whole thing just left me feeling very weird about the whole experience.
Well, even like when Ben Affleck takes off his shirt after the first sort of major skirmish, and he's got all the bruises on his back, and yet he's back like 4 hours later in the thick of it again. Like, admittedly, he's supposed to be a regular person. He doesn't have any abilities, as it were, right? His abilities, he's rich, right?
Yeah,
as he says in the movie, in the trailer too. So that's not a spoiler, but yeah, I mean, like, does he have some magic? I don't know. Maybe he's got like a medical marijuana prescription or something.
No, because it's at that point that he changes costumes too.
Yeah, but he puts on the heavy duty armor one, right?
He puts on not quite the full armor that he was wearing.
Not the one. Yeah,
versus, but he looked uncomfortable. Like, he looked like the Michelin Man. He was very beefed up. Like, he just looked like he was. If you had given him a good stiff push, he would have fallen on his back and died.
Yeah. I like the guy who plays Alfred, though. I got to say, in this series, Jeremy Irons, right?
Yeah, but it was a bit wasted too. I mean, he got some good lines, but that's a pretty iconic actor to be playing a pretty
and Amy Adams too, right, as Lois Lane.
Yeah, she kind of got a chump change part too. Yeah, or exactly. They were okay. Well, we'll bring her in.
That was a payday, I'm sure, though.
Oh,
right?
no doubt. So two things. One, so it's supposed to be months theoretically. I think they say it's 6 months later or something like that. After the death of Superman, when they go to put him into the pool to bring him back to life, his arm flops to the side. I kept thinking, okay, shouldn't he be stiff at least? Like,
or decomposing or something. Well, he is from another planet, admittedly, right?
They couldn't have sewn his shirt to his side so that at least his arm doesn't flop down. Stuff like that drives me nuts. And
I missed that part. I should have laughed at that part.
And am I the only one who spent the whole movie staring at Henry Cavill's lip?
Well, yeah, you told me about this, but I didn't know.
You're not the only one.
Every scene because of course he starts the movie, right? They cut that big scene where kids interviewing him for YouTube or whatever it is. Every time he was on screen, I could not listen to what he was saying. I just kept thinking, that lip, I can't tell where it's real and where it's fake, but he always looks a little wooden, and I'm trying to put it together in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that
when you told me that, when you said that, I do recall looking at his face going, it looked weird, but I also said I was looking at other like the wrinkles between Gal Gadot's Gadot, right? Gal Gadot's eyebrows there. She's got a couple of age wrinkles there, which I kind of thought was kind of strange for a superhuman to have. But yeah, you're right. I do remember looking at it. And then so tell spoilers for the people who at home are wondering what the hell we're talking about. Why don't you explain to our folks at home as they transport around, beaming themselves from one room to the other, what you're talking about?
So sorry, for a few episodes ago we talked about this. Henry Cavill, who is Superman in these pictures, has another contract with Paramount to do a recurring role in the Mission Impossible films, for which he sports a mustache. And in this picture, they had shot the film. He had packed up his troubles. He had gone to England to start filming this new Mission Impossible film. He got a call from the people at Warner Brothers to say, we're going to do some reshoots. We need to bring you back. Paramount dug in its heels and said, we have a contract, and the contract says he's not changing his freaking mustache. So they actually forced him to go back, film the scenes for as Superman sporting a mustache, and then digitally had to go in and remove the mustache, which must have cost them a couple bucks, for which you got to think the people at Paramount are laughing laughing hysterically because that's a really, really nasty move. Like he could have taken that thing off and grown it back in what, like a week or 2 weeks maybe? But no, they said, you keep the mustache, you pay a couple $1 million to have a digital artist sit there and shave off Henry Cavill's mustache. So in multiple scenes in this movie, you find yourself looking at his lip thinking, his lip's not moving right. Like it does catch your eye in a few scenes.
So I have a question though. So as you know, I don't shave very much of my face. I have a beard and mustache for those of you who don't know me, but you guys do. So where does Superman get razor blades and that survive cutting hair?
You know, I seem to recall I don't know if it was an episode of the old cartoon show or one in the comic books where he has a piece of metal, and he uses his laser vision. He refracts it off of that and shaves his face with that.
Why? Because he starts growing a beard or something? Or?
Because that's how he needs to shave. Because the only thing powerful enough to shave off his facial hair is his own laser vision.
Right.
Whoever decided that is genius, by the way. That's just a lot of fun.
Right. We're going to have to mark this episode explicit because I'm always worried about Lois Lane too in the sack.
Yeah, like
that's the old Kevin Smith joke, right?
If this was like a YouTube channel, we would like immediately smash cut into the animated series, or maybe it was Justice League. It might have been a Justice League episode where they fight Darkseid, and Superman's got this real interesting monologue where he's like, "Imagine living in a world of cardboard, where you're afraid if you lose control for even the slightest second, you're going to hurt everyone around you." And yeah, spoilers: Darkseid is somebody who can actually take a beating, so he goes pounds him a little bit.
Yeah,
right.
And then we cut to the scene from Mallrats where they're discussing what it would be like to have sex with a character like Superman. And
wait. So
he requires kryptonite condoms for that. So
right.
Yeah, I just want to say that I missed it, but we're out of the spoiler-free zone now, so we're back into the spoiler-free zone. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So we should tune it down a bit. All right. Hey, actually, we've got a few minutes left, so why don't we go through our picks real quick? So, should I go first?
Sure.
Okay. So my pick is Robert Kirkman has this. I think it's a 4-part series called The Secret History of Comics. That's running on AMC. Robert Kirkman, for those of you who don't know, is the guy who wrote the Walking Dead series books. Writes, and he still also writes the TV show episodes as well. He's involved in that. Anyway, so and I think I mentioned last week that there was an episode about the first episode was about Stan Lee and the guy Jonathan, fill me in here, who
Steve Ditko.
Yeah, they were. Maybe I didn't talk about that on the show, but they were at odds. But this particular episode was interesting for me because I didn't know the backstory behind Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Joe Shuster, right? And I know Joe Shuster because, Jonathan, you have the Joe Shuster Award that you're involved in, right? They still do that?
I have in the past been involved with that group that hands out, they named the Canadian comic book annual awards after Joe Shuster, who was notably Canadian.
Yeah, again, another Canadian. But yeah, so those two guys, for those of you who don't know, are the guys who came up with the idea of Superman when they were teenagers in high school or something like that, right? And then they grew up and wrote together, and they wrote this thing. And the story that they talk about in The Secret History of Comics, I'm not going to spoil it for who might want to watch it. Maybe it'll be on Netflix eventually or something like that. But they lost the rights because it was early days to the Superman property and all of the properties. So even when they came back with Superboy, all the stuff during the wars, and it wasn't until they got to the first movie, and they tried to sue their way back in to get the rights back, but they ended up getting themselves fired and all kinds of other stuff. So it was a really interesting history behind Superman, the Superman property, and the two guys who created them. And it wasn't until they actually did the movie with Christopher Reeve this time and Richard Donner as director. I've forgotten who. Oh, and it was another writer, I believe. I've forgotten his name now.
Neil Adams.
Neil Adams?
Neil Adams.
Yeah. He was actually in the show talking about these guys all the way along. And then he talks about how he found out the story about them because he kept asking people about these two guys and what happened to them. And then he found that like Joe Shuster was like penniless and, delivering packages and stuff like that and living, like really poor. I mean, this has happened a lot in the 40s, 50s, and 60s with these kind of things, but they got themselves back in. And in fact, they were even credited in the first Superman movie starring Christopher Reeve, which is 1977, I think, somewhere in there. Anyway, so yeah, you know about this story, obviously, Jonathan. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously for longtime comic fans like me, it's a familiar story, and obviously with the connection to the Shuster Awards, it's close to the heart. Yeah, I mean, these two kids, they wanted to get their break in this world. They had created this character Superman, and they sold it to what would become DC Comics in 1938, and they basically had had no choice. If they wanted to get this character published, they needed to sell this to this company, and they did that. And little did they know it was going to turn into be this monster thing. But that precluded them from being not only earning the rewards from that, but the company went on to build an empire on the success of this character that led to the pioneering of so many other characters that were in the shadows of this. And these guys, as you say, by the time they get around to the 1970s, they are not doing well. There's some health problems, and these guys, they were lucky in a way to find an advocate like Neil Adams, who is one of the most iconic creators of the 1970s and onwards, to triumph them and say that you're not doing right by these guys. They were the ones to call attention to the fact that there was these this legacy of work for pay in comic books where creators were not credited in any way for the work that they were doing. It was just you got paid by the page, you got paid by the book, and that was it. And these huge corporations, by this point Warner Brothers was involved with DC. They were making money off these people's backs and their creativity. And so I mean, it is a fascinating story. I highly recommend you guys check out this episode that Tim's recommending. And there's countless books and other ways to digest this information to get a good look at the legacy of these people. And the same thing happened to more than a few creators over the years. And now it has spun around to the point where now we're watching that Thor Ragnarok movie and watching even this movie we watched last week with Justice League. They ran a big chunk at the end of the movie saying, Wonder Woman created by William Moulton Marston. All the credits were there for all these different people who had created these books, because the least they can do for these people is give them credit. And in some cases, there is actually a remuneration of acknowledging that they're taking their intellectual works and doing extra things with them. So it's come a long way. And that fight that they fought in the 1970s to get credited for their work is an inspiration for people standing up for their intellectual rights and for their creative rights.
Cool. All right. So we got a few more minutes. I just will mark the 15 minutes late. So do you want to jump into your pick there, Jaime?
Yeah, two quick ones. One is a tweet by the nice folks involved with Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It's a little video, 10 seconds probably, showing Chris Pratt with a little baby dinosaur. So that's just a teaser to get people excited about the upcoming movie with Jeff Goldblum, who's going to come out as Ian Malcolm again, which is great because I loved him as the Grandmaster in Thor Ragnarok. So it'll be good. And the other sort of larger one that I also want to see or do is this whole Star Wars Secret of the Empire virtual reality thing that Disney's got going at Disneyland at Disney World, where you put on a VR headset and haptic backpack, and you and a whole bunch of other people are going through this VR environment that you can actually walk through, because they've set up some sort of sound stage kind of system that I guess it's a little hard to tell from the diagram how this works, so you don't bang into things, I guess, but presumably it's tracking really nicely with the VR, so you feel like you're taking part in a Rogue One type mission where you're going through and trying to do stuff against the Empire. You're trying to infiltrate. That looks really cool. It's not cheap. It looks like it's $30 for 30 minutes. But it looks really cool. I mean, if you're going to a park like a Disneyland or a Disney World, you kind of know that the premium experiences are going to cost you. And this one looks like it's worth every penny.
That sounds awesome.
Cool. All right, Jonathan, what do you got for us?
Well, I've got the new Hulu series called Runaways, which of course is based on a Marvel comic printed in the early 2000s, written by Brian K. Vaughan, who is helped one of the writers of Lost, and also one of the people who created, or he is the co-creator of Why the Last Man, which is a very popular comic book series that's being produced for television as well. Runaways is about a group of kids who discover that, and spoilers if you don't want to know, but this is right off the top. It's about a group of kids who find out that their parents are supervillains, and
you just ruined it for me.
Yeah. So it basically follows these 6 characters as they, everybody thinks their parents are evil. These guys find out their parents are legitimately evil. And so they, as the title infers, they run away, and then they have to try and figure out how to reconcile reconcile the fact that their parents are not just, doing some bad things, like some really, really bad things going on there. And it was a really, really great comic. The original was drawn by Canadian Adrian Alfona. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend, if you're going to go back to the source material, you should. It's really, really enjoyable. Particularly the first sort of volume, the first collection you would find at your Barnes and Noble or Amazon is really, really enjoyable. So it's about these kids trying to basically not only reconcile the fact that the parents are evil, but then they also start to try and figure out, what does that mean for them? Do they have these abilities that their parents might have? Where do they?
Oh, they're those kind of supervillains.
Oh, they're not just mwahaha. These are legitimately powered individuals.
Right. Yeah.
So these kids, again, spoilers, but one of them figures out that they have magical abilities. One figures out that they have alien powers. One of them is, got some psychic abilities that they didn't even realize they had, because they didn't put two and two together and realize they had these abilities, because why would you suspect that? But it's a really, really great series. It's a great concept. And so Hulu's picked it up and is doing this in conjunction with Marvel's television wing. So that includes Jeff Loeb, who's one of the great writers of architects of the Marvel TV universe, and some of the great comics over the years. So I'm excited that they're getting into this level of depth, and that they're also going in this sort of younger direction. A lot of the series that they've done for comic books, maybe with the exception of Gifted, which is on Fox right now, they focused on, adults and established people and, a more mature side of the universe. So it'd be really interesting to see what they do with these sort of younger characters, and if they can, get a different audience and a different vibe in there.
Yeah, I started watching, I was telling Jaime before the show, I started watching the show because it was just on just before we started taping here. And so I watched like the first half hour, and, it was hard pressed to hit pause and come and record a podcast with you guys. It was pretty compelling, kind of interesting enough to sort of see where it's going to go. It started out a little bit like, like a high school drama kind of easy kind of vibe, or what's the one, the Shakespeare one that Heath Ledger was in?
10 Things I Hate About You?
10 Things I Hate About You, with what's her name?
Julia Stiles?
Julia Stiles, yes. That sort of, high school kind of, awkward kid kind of thing, and with some sort of backstory of missing people and what have you. And one kid starts to have spoilers for people. One kid sort of has discovered she has some sort of superpower, but nobody's really sort of put two and two together yet. And where I left the show was the parents were just getting together to have their sort of first party kind of thing, that they have these meetings that they do. Yeah. So it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They're only doing 10 episodes for the first season, and they dropped the first 3 on Hulu the other day.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
So they're dropping the first 2, and for our Canadian listeners, that's going to be on Showcase here in Canada. So you don't have to pay the premium that our neighbors do. If you have standard cable, it's part of that package.
Is it part of standard? Is it part of standard, or is it part of the VIP package?
I think regular Showcase is part of the regular package. If I'm not mistaken, so we can look that one up. But I think regular Showcase. I think there's Showcase premium channels, but I think this one's just regular Showcase. But they dropped the first 3 episodes on Hulu already, and then it's going to be a weekly show. So it's not quite Netflix model. You do have to tune in once a week when it comes out. But I'm keen to see what they can do with this. Especially, I like these little 10 episode, 12 episode. Punisher dropped on the weekend. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I'm keen to get into that. But even 13 episodes now is starting to feel like a chore. I think 10 episodes is the right number for a series like this, and I'm keen to see what they can get to without too many of those chuffa episodes, the ones that just don't have a direction. They can keep it on point and just keep going with it.
Right. Cool stuff. Yeah, I watched that. What's the name of the Emily Blunt show? No, not Emily Blunt. Who's the one that's married to Justin Timberlake?
Jessica Biel.
Jessica Biel. Yeah, she just did a quick 10 episode sort of murder mystery sort of thing, psychological drama kind of thing, and that was interesting. It was good to watch. It kind of fell flat at the end there. I didn't really sort of buy the premise, but
that was the Sinner.
Yes, Sinner. You're kind of building up what she does something in the first episode, and then you sort of have to figure out why, and then the why was a stretch. Yeah. I don't know if you guys watched that at all.
No, that was another one of those. It's only 8 episodes. It seemed like it was one of those you just sort of wait till it was there and dive into it all.
Yeah. Well, it's like the OA. The OA was good too. We can talk about. I think when Orville goes into break and Star Trek goes starts in break already. we can talk about some of these other things that are interesting to us, right? So
Cool
stuff. All right. Hey, Jaime, if people want to get a hold of you on the interwebs, where would they look?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
Right. And Jonathan, if they want to find you on the interwebs?
I am at JPK News on Twitter.
All righty. And as I usually say at the top of the show, I am Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA on the Twitter machine, and that's the best way to get a hold of me. So until next week, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us out on our website at spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
You really ought to write this down at the beginning of the episode, sir.
You know, that doesn't help either. I do have these written down, but
teleprompter.
Well, you know, it's funny. We sort of end up rolling with these things as we go. Like we've just like this, for those of you driving at home thing, and there's a bunch of other ones that we say from time to time. But that's how we start the show and how we end the show. And then, like Jaime said at the beginning of the show, it's hard for us because we both expect me to roll into Welcome to More Than Just Code podcast kind of thing, right? So
yeah. Tim, and then you've also got the way that Roundabout does its whole thing. So having three different podcasts must be especially difficult for you to...
Well, especially when I do it on one night. Last week I did all three, and by the time, 12:30 rolled around, I was like putting my head down on the desk and letting you guys talk. The finger on the mute button, so you couldn't hear me snore. Yeah, I was just watching a bit of that new Runaways show, Marvel's Runaways.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean, I'm already like 20 minutes in, and I want to see how the rest of the episode goes,
Cool. That's, do you know who produces that? Because it's probably on a different channel.
Hulu, actually, in the States.
Oh, it's Hulu. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, Hulu presents right at the very beginning of the show, right? So.
Oh, wait, but now I have my doubts, and now I've got to look this up, because you might think that Netflix was the one creating Discovery, and it's not. They just paid for the rights to distribute it outside of the US. Let me see.
Yeah. No, it definitely said Hulu presents on the show, like on the tin, right? And it's not on our I would think that would normally be on hello. I would think that it would normally be on like Space Channel or something like that. Like I think Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is on ABC or NBC for us, but all the other, like the Supergirl has moved over to Supergirl's on Showcase too, which is I wouldn't have thought them to be a more sci-fi channel. I think they're more artsy, kind of production channel. So
ripped off Showtime and Bravo.
Sorry?
It's basically ripped off from Showtime, and it's half Showtime, half CW.
Right. Yeah. So because Supergirl's on CW in the States, right, Jaime?
That's correct.
Yeah. I was just telling him that I've been watching the first 20 minutes of Runaways.
Oh, you mean my pick for this week?
Oh.
Yeah, I was. We were talking about what channel does it come out on? And I said, that's probably a bad idea because it's probably hard to figure out who the producer is, since it can vary between Canada and the United States. And even when Tim said, it's a Hulu thing, I was like, well, let's make sure, because Netflix kind of presents Discovery like as if they're the ones with the show and they just paid the money to distribute it.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, it definitely says Hulu right on the tin.
It's a Hulu show in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like The Verge agrees with that. So, sorry, what's up?
Do you have the Hulu yourself?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Largely because they, cheapness on my side, so they haven't done enough to make me either spend more than my normal budget or push something else out of of the budget. So Netflix is always in. Okay, that's a given. Amazon is in just because I have Prime for other reasons, shipping. And then I just, opened the purse strings for Discovery. I'll probably hesitate to do the same for Hulu unless they get, very consistent with their offerings. And it's looking pretty positive. I mean, The Handmaid's Tale sounds like that was really good. There's Runaways apparently, is looking up. So that's good. So if they can have
Jonathan liked the book, right? So
so I think if they can have Netflix style, like, every month I'm going to have something that I can only have here and continue to get me to fork my money over, I think that'll be their challenge. Very similar to CBS is going to lose my money just as soon as Discovery's done, right? That's very obvious to me. They will lose my money.
Oh, really?
And then they'll get it again next fall when they start doing season 2. So
isn't that why HBO Go snapped up Game of Thrones?
That's
drive up subscribers, right?
I mean, that's part of it. Like HBO is on the cusp of having that sort of thing for me. Between Game of Thrones and Silicon Valley and Westworld. I think if they had one more thing so that every season, at the very least, like season of the calendar year is covered, then I might say, all right, let me open up the purse strings a little bit more.
Yeah, it's funny for me. The show I also watch on TM and Go is what I use here. That's I guess our Canadian version of that, the movie network Go. And I watched Shameless. I'd forgotten it was on. I just caught the last 2 episodes of the last season, which I guess I missed, and then now I'm watching the new season, right? So and I got to finally watch the Ghostbusters reboot the other day, thanks to the TMN Go people.
Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. It's kind of funny. Like unfortunately, I'm still paying like $100 a month or whatever it is for cable as well. You are too, Jonathan, right?
Mine is actually I've gotten it lowered significantly. I basically told them I would pack up my whole tent and go home, so they cut me a pretty good deal.
Did they? This is Rogers, or
yeah,
really?
Yeah, I got cable and internet as a bundle, and
oh right, okay, yeah.
I've got unlimited internet plus I've got like the jumbo package of cable, and all of that all in is like $130 or something.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, because I pay at least that much for cable as well, for internet as well through Bell, right? So I haven't got all my services in one basket yet. Yep. And I don't know. I've never liked Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about Bell. So
yeah, that's true.
The problem is when you have like 2 titans and they're controlling everything, you don't really have a lot of choices.
Yeah, well, and Jaime, what do you guys have for choices in the States? Like,
it will depend regionally,
Comcast, right?
So
yeah.
my region happens to be Comcast. Locally, you can get CenturyLink, probably something else that I'm forgetting. If you're not in the Comcast region, then you must be in a Time Warner cable region. They more or less split the United States. I don't think by like an east-west north Mason-Dixon line or things, nothing like that. I think it's more like whichever market they happen to be in when they acquire the other sub companies that comprise them today.
Right. Is that what the Mason-Dixon line divides?
No. The Mason-Dixon line goes north-south and
north-south. Oh, but it's way over by New York and over there somewhere. We looked it up once.
Yeah, it's really weird. And then
south of the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah, that's right. We used to say what about Tammy, because she didn't want people to be able to pinpoint where she is. So
the only 2 definitive things I can think of that people talk about splitting the east and the west of the United States would be the Mississippi and possibly the Pecos.
Right. Pecos is a range of mountains?
Pecos River. Sorry, both are rivers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because the Mississippi goes right almost from like Canada to like the Gulf, right? Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, it definitely goes to the Gulf of Mexico. I have no idea how far north it goes.
It goes quite a way, I think, actually. If you look I've looked on the maps app a few times.
Mississippi goes all the way up to like north of the Ohio, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty high. Yeah, like almost up to the Canadian border is what I said, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anywho, that's interesting stuff.
Say hello to your viral era. With Planoly, creators grew their social following by 6 times in just 3 months. Planoly is the only social planning tool you'll need to get inspired, stay organized, and level up your content. And now you can auto-post across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and Pinterest. Try it free for 7 days at Planoly.com. That's Planoly.com. And for a limited time only, use code CHEERS40 for 40% off all annual plans. Our best deal ever.